From Blackfoot to Teton, we've got your District 6 breakdown right here on the East Idaho Prepcast with Lance Taylor.
It's another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down everything in Districts 5 and 6 in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney joined as always by Lance Taylor. Lance, you're looking quite dapper today.
Well, thank you. I've got somewhere to go after work. Have to dress up a little bit.
Sure. And I'm kind of the opposite. My eyes have been bothering me, so I'm wearing the glasses today. I've got my Boston Red Sox hoodie on, so I'm casual Thursday here in the office.
Good.
If you want to see what we're wearing, of course, you can watch the video of this at IdahoSports.com's YouTube channel or our Facebook page. You can also listen to the audio only at IdahoSports.com and wherever you download your podcasts. The East Idaho Prepcast is brought to you by Pure Adrenaline Motorsports, your source for pulse-pounding adrenaline sports apparel and accessories that ensure you have what you need to unleash your inner beast.
These are some new glasses we got. You see the sparkles on the bottom?
The little specks. That looks good.
Of course, you can find those glasses at all Good to Go stores in Eastern Idaho. You can find them at Bill's Bike and Run, and now at Ron's Tire and Motorsports. That's one of the Point S's in the old Smith Chevrolet building in Idaho Falls. They also carry all of our snowmobile gear, monosuits, balaclavas, goggles, as well as these glasses and everything else. So don't forget to stop into Ron's Tire and Motorsports, and you can get those as well.
Awesome. A lot of good places. No excuse not to get yourself a pair of those sweet-looking shades. So.
That's right.
All right, Lance. Well, last week we did our big girls basketball preview, talked about all the teams we thought would do well. And then this week, the first coaches poll of the season came out. So I thought it would be good to stop down real quick, look at that girls basketball coaches poll, and kind of note the teams from East Idaho that were in the initial poll. So if we start at the 5A level, checking in at number 5 is Thunder Ridge. Titans are off to a nice start.
Well, and if you look at the Titans, they're really the only team this year so far that has pushed Blackfoot at all, and so they're it's a team to watch for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of Blackfoot, they're tied for first in the first 4A poll of the season with Burley. It appears like, at least from a distance, that these two big Titans are on a collision course, right? Blackfoot undefeated, Burley undefeated. Both have star players on both sides. And now, Lance, with the Max Preps rankings being used to seed the state basketball tournament, there's a good chance that these two teams could wind up on the opposite side of the bracket the way it's intended to be. In years past, maybe this would have been a semifinal or, heaven forbid, a first-round matchup.
Yeah, well, and of course, if it started right now, they would be on opposite sides of the bracket, assuming that they both made it in. And people out there who are listening, you got to remember, teams still make it into the state tournament the way they always have. It's just once you get there, then they go ahead and use those max prep seedings in order to make that work.
Correct. There's still representation for each district, and which league you play in determines how many bids you get the state. And then yes, once the field of 8 has been set, it gets seeded. So Blackfoot tied for first. No surprise there. Preston checks in. They're tied for fourth. Preston's got their holiday tournament coming up this weekend, Lance. That's going to be good competition. Middleton is coming over to play in that, and I'm really hoping we get to see Preston and Middleton showdown.
Yeah, that could be a very good showdown. I've had a chance to watch Preston this year. They came over and played Sugar Salem. It was a game that went into overtime. It was a very, very good game. Preston's looking good, looking extremely good this year.
Well, speaking of Sugar Salem, Lance, you know how to transition perfectly. Speaking of Sugar Salem, they are the top-ranked team in the first 3A girls basketball coaches poll of the season. Right on their heels at number 2 is Snake River, and then Teton is ranked 4th. So 3 East Idaho schools in the top 5.
Yeah, Teton has actually played some very good basketball. Teton's girls, last year I felt that Teton's girls might have overall been the best athletes around. I'm not saying necessarily the best basketball players, but I think they were the best athletes that were around, and they're raising a little bit of havoc this year.
Yeah, they're going to be a sneaky team to watch. And again, problem is they play in the same league as Sugar. They played in another conference. Who knows what would happen? The 2A poll, the 2A top 5, we have Aberdeen at number 4. This is a team we talked about a lot last week, Lance. This is a team we really like, and Aberdeen makes it into the first poll of the season at number 4.
Yeah, they do. And this is a poll that I think will change a bit throughout the course of the season. You take, for example, Soda Springs that got off to a really struggling start this year. However, those have been extremely competitive games. Soda Springs, with that one win, is, I'm telling you right now, the best one-win team in the state.
Well, we talked about they put together a really difficult schedule as well. So, yeah.
I mean, they've already played, the number 1 ranked Sugar Salem team. They've played a top 5 ranked Preston team as well, and they are a very good team. But that's not to diminish Aberdeen. Aberdeen is extremely good as well, and Aberdeen's a team that I think we will see at the state tournament.
Yeah. 1A D1 poll, you've got Butte County second in the poll, and then Grace is in a 3-way tie for 4th. Those two teams play in the same conference. Grace, we talked about it last week. They're the defending conference and state champions, but boy, this Butte County team is loaded for bear. They look really good.
Yeah, they are. And, they've already got 6 wins under their belt. I think, as you look at Grace at 3-2, I don't think those 2 losses are really indicative of how a matchup between Butte and Grace would go. I think that'd be very tight. No shocker. I mean, they're not in District 5 or 6. Speaking of Lapway, no shocker that they're on top. They've only got 2 games though. However, that is the team that will, is going to a big tournament here. Also are their boys, and we'll get a better look at what Lapway brings with both the boys and the girls as well, because everyone's shooting for those 2 teams.
Yes. And then the 1A D2 poll, Rockland tied for first with Council in the first coaches poll of the year.
Yeah.
And Mackey finds themselves tied for 5th. No surprise here. We kind of thought Rockland and Mackey were kind of the top 2 teams.
Yeah, and then Richfield out of District 4 is there as well, and for purposes, we kind of, at least for location purposes, they're kind of the eastern part of the state a little bit as well. But Rockland and Mackey, that's going to give us some very good matchups right there.
I mean, I think right now, Kearsley Boyer from Rockland could be the 1A D2 player of the year for the state of Idaho. I mean, she is so fun to watch. So
and Rockland tends to pretty much always be tough. They just are just tough.
Yeah. Great coach Vern Nelson, and we talked about that a lot last week. So if you missed our girls basketball preview, definitely go back and listen to last week's episode. We really dissected all of the girls hoops teams, and today we're going to do the same for the boys. Our boys basketball previews are all up on the website at IdahoSports.com. The competition opened last week, and so this is a good point for us to talk about who we think might stand out. We'll just start at the top 5A and work our way down to the 1A ranks. And when you look at the 5A classification for the High Country Conference, the consensus at the top seems to be Thunder Ridge, Madison, Rigby in some order, then a drop off, and then there's Highland and Idaho Falls. How do you see this playing out, Lance?
I don't see Thunder Ridge being anywhere near that top. I had a chance to watch them earlier this week. Thunder Ridge is going through some growing pains after losing, Lawyer Driggs last year, that really good team that they had. I watched them against Hillcrest earlier this week, and Hillcrest ended up winning by 16, but that was more of a 20 to 25 point ball game as well. Of course, we'll be talking about Hillcrest here in just a minute as well. Right now, I would put Rigby on top of that and close with Madison.
Okay. I wonder if, Hillcrest is good. They're kind of like Rigby in football. They make a lot of good teams look bad sometimes, but
yeah.
I'll be curious to see how Thunder Ridge adjusts and plays.
It's a different team without Lawyer Driggs. And it's just, as I watched them play, they're still finding out, where the majority of their scoring is going to come from this year, as they have just really struggled to, put the ball in the hole. It was a tough task against a good Hillcrest team.
I think when you look at the coaches, the coaches in the league, you've got two really good ones at the top. Lee Toldson, the coach at Thunder Ridge, previously coached in Wyoming and won a state championship in Douglas, Wyoming. Very good coach. And then, of course, Justin Jones at Rigby, right? Rigby lost a lot of guys last year. They do have Carson Barber coming back, but Coach Jones is such a good coach that I think Rigby's going to be in the mix. And Madison is kind of a sleeper team. You know, they've got a new head coach this year in Shane Humphreys.
Yeah, Shane's a very good coach. I've known Shane for a long time. Shane's a very good coach. He was a college ball player at Rick's Junior College in their last year being a college, and played at Westminster, which is Division II now down in Salt Lake. He's a very good coach, and they've got a good team. When I say it comes down to them and Rigby, I think it could go either way. And I think by mid-season, we'll have a lot better grasp on those two teams and where they could finish out.
Definitely. And Rigby was a team that improved as the season went on last year, right? They got off to a slow start and ended up at state. And a lot of people didn't think Rigby was going to make it to state last year, and they proved everybody wrong.
Well, if you remember, they had to win a game against Lawyer Driggs and Thunder Ridge in order to get in there, and then they ended up winning the consolation championship. So that was a good little run for Coach Jones, who's won 3 state championships, all at the 4A level with Rigby. Of course, his brother then is also been very successful at the 4A level down at Preston.
Yes. And we'll talk about Tyler Jones in just a second at Preston. And then Highland and Idaho Falls. Can either one of these teams make the move up? Highland brings back Ty Pearson as their head coach, and they lost basically 4 of their 5 starters last year. Jaden Wright, good young junior forward, started as a sophomore last year. Idaho Falls has a new coach this year. So do either of those teams make a move up, do you think?
I don't see it at this point of the season. Doesn't mean it can't happen. But at this point of the season, I just do not see it happening. I think the mountain's a little too high for them to climb. I think both those teams will spend this year kind of rebuilding and getting those younger teams that lost so many kids, getting them ready for next year's play. I just don't see them being in that top tier of the 5A down here.
Sure. And Val Rodell is the new coach at Idaho Falls this season, replacing Howard Hart, who had some medical problems, wasn't able to coach last year. Nate Hartman was the interim coach, and he's of course now at Middleton. So
well, Howard Hart had done a great job. He had done a great job at Idaho Falls. Won a state championship with them their last year 4A before going up, and Idaho Falls has the opportunity. I think particularly next year, Idaho Falls. We'll see how they finish off this year first, but I'm looking a little more to next year for them. Doesn't mean they can't be and won't be competitive this year, but I just don't see them and Highland up in that mix.
Yeah. Well, let's transition to the 4A High Country Conference, where this is pretty clear cut. I think Hillcrest should be the overwhelming favorite, and then I think Blackfoot is kind of got the second spot on lockdown. I think there's kind of a gap. And then you've got in the coaches poll, at least, Skyline, Shelley, and Bonneville. All 3 of those programs appear to be rebuilding a little bit.
Yeah, they do. I think, when you talk about Hillcrest, they went down to that Corner Canyon tournament down in Utah, did an excellent job down there. They went 1-2, but the 2 games they lost were very competitive. They started out by beating Farmington, who has one of the top 30 players in the country that's headed to BYU next year, held him to 15 points. Isaac Davis had 18 points in that game. It was a big one. Madison, I know we're on the 4A now, but they also went down to that tournament. And they went 2-1 after losing to Bingham High School. Their first game, they went on and won their next 2 games. So, anytime you can get in a big tournament like that and have an opportunity to play, even bigger schools, because you take, a 4A here in Idaho, and 4A here in Idaho would be maybe a smaller 3A in the state of Utah. And so, when they're playing 5A, 6A teams down there, that's a huge school size difference, and showed they could compete.
Yeah, Hillcrest started 5 underclassmen last year. 4 of the 5 are back. The only guy that isn't is Trey Kofe, and it's because he moved to another town. I think in Utah. So
Yeah.
this is such a great nucleus. Jace Austin's back at point guard. Cooper Kessler's at the 2. You've got Garrett Phippen on the wing. And, of course, Isaac Davis, who really wowed people last year as the starting center as a freshman. He's now a sophomore. I'm really excited to see his growth and development, because usually from freshman to sophomore year, there's kind of a jump that players take.
Yeah, there is. He's doing very well. I've had a chance to talk to Isaac, ran into him the other day. Of course, him and my son have been great friends from the time they were in diapers. I spent a lot of hours in my home and stuff. Isaac's a great kid, great basketball talent as well. The nice thing is what Hillcrest has a lot of ability to score on the floor. A lot of people that can put the ball in the hole. The Kessler brothers can shoot. Austin can shoot. They've got some kids off the bench too. But then with Isaac inside, the nice thing is Isaac draws a lot of attention in the interior. So when they pass it into him, teams tend to collapse. And that opens up a lot of 3-point opportunities for Highland, and they can hit them. Highland is, at this point of the season, is my preseason pick to be state champions. If we were doing like a preseason probability pick, they would be my preseason pick for the 4A state champions.
Yeah, Hillcrest took 4th at state last year. They fell to Bishop Kelly in that in that 3rd place game at state. So Blackfoot, Javante King, we know he's a great talent. The question is, what about the guys around him? But I think Blackfoot's got a good coach with Clint RV and a good system. Last year they said they played positionless basketball, where any of the 5 guys could bring the ball up the floor and play down low or outside. And I didn't really see it when I watched Blackfoot. I still saw traditional like guards, wings, and bigs, but Blackfoot's got athletes, that's for sure.
Yeah, they do have athletes, and of course we know what King did in football as well. I think when you look at the athletes that they have, one thing that allows you to do, even if you don't have the most offensive power on your team, that really allows you to buckle down defensively. And I think that's one thing that we will see out of Blackfoot this year is maybe some low scoring games. I don't think they've got the firepower to hang with a team like Hillcrest. If a game gets up into the 70s, and stuff like that, maybe even the 60s, I think Blackfoot's a team that defensively has the ability to hold teams low because of their athletes. And I think if they can keep games down in the 50s and below, they have a good opportunity to win those ball games.
And then we talked about Skyline, Shelley, and Bonneville kind of at the bottom. All 3 of those teams suffered pretty significant losses. Skyline, basically said goodbye to 4 of their 5 starters, right? They lost Cade Marlowe and Raleigh Shippen and Landon Merzlock, the big 6'7" guy inside. They were kind of the Cinderella team last year, got to state with that sub 500 record. Yeah. Shelley lost Braxton Miskin. Bonneville lost Carson Johnson and Cy Gummo, Caleb Stoddard, etc. Yeah. So which of these 3 teams do you think makes a move and challenges maybe for a top 2 spot?
I think it's a toss-up for them. I did have an opportunity to watch Skyline earlier on when they had their jamboree. The jamboree this year was with them in Sugar Salem and West Jefferson. It was obvious that Skyline had lost a number of players from the year before, and then I'd had a chance to see a number of their games and call a number of their games last year as well. I think they've got some talent that will improve by the end of the year, and so I think they've got the ability there. But I think between them and Bonneville, it's really a toss-up at this point. I just don't know. And I have not had a chance to see Bonneville, but just knowing what they lost last year, I think those 2 will be very similar teams.
Bonneville was one of those frustrating teams last year because you'd see them go out and play wire to wire with like a Hillcrest, right?
Yeah.
And then turn around and like lose a game that they like should have won easily. They were inconsistent last year. It was very frustrating to watch Bonneville, but man, they could really shoot the ball. We'll see if they have some more shooters this year with Coach John Tucker. The Southeast Idaho Conference in the 4A ranks, Lance. This thing is going to be a dogfight all year long, just like it was last year. You've got Pocatello, Preston, and Century. And last year, I think all 3 of those teams could have made a case to be at state. I think they were among the 8 best 4A teams. Only 1 got to go. Same situation this year, which means every conference game is going to be a lot of fun, and districts too. Yeah, and my preseason pick for that is Preston. I just think Tyler Jones is so good. It seems like he's one of those coaches that when he loses a bunch of players, he
he doesn't rebuild. He just kind of reloads based upon who's coming up through the program. So until someone can really get up there and knock them off and prove that they are consistently better, I'm going to go with Preston on that. However, I'll tell you what, Pocatello is my dark horse, though, in that conference. Pocatello is my dark horse to win that conference. Again, I picked Preston, but for the dark horses, I picked Pocatello. But Century is a very good team, too, and I think you hit it right on that it is going to be a dogfight in that conference this year.
So Preston, brings back Brecker Knapp. They bring back Drew Jones. That's head coach Tyler Jones's son. Yeah. He's only a sophomore. He got some time at state as a freshman last year off the bench. Yep. Pocatello returns Ryan Payne at point guard. Of course, Julian Bowie, who started as a freshman last year, electrifying player. They've got Jackson Williams inside. Century has Bruin Fleischman back, he's a great slasher. He might be the best slasher in the state in terms of catching it on the wing, getting to the hoop in traffic, and getting a score. Yep. And then what makes Century real intriguing, because everybody thought Century would be down because they lost so many seniors from last year's team, but they've got this freshman, Isaiah Harwell, who was so dominant in 8th grade basketball in Pocatello. I mean, he was like LeBron James against them.
He was a lot like Isaac Davis was, back as an 8th grader. Of course, his older brother, Malik Harwell, went through that program, was very good. Malik went up and played for Boise State after. And I think Harwell's going to be, he's going to go like any player does. No matter how good you are, you still have to learn how to play at the varsity level. It might take him a little bit, but he's going to be a special player. I don't know if this year's going to be his breakout year where he goes and dominates things, but I'll tell you what, he's going to turn a lot of heads this year, and his name is going to be on the map with everybody for the next several years. And he is one of those X factor pieces. And if he does step up as a freshman and has just an unbelievable year, they could be that team that takes the conference.
This is going to be so fun because Drew Jones, Preston, sophomore, Julian Bowie, Pocatello, sophomore, Isaiah Harwell, freshman, Century. These guys are going to be duking it out for years.
Yeah, yep, they will be. It's a young league right now, but it's a good league. Oftentimes young means inexperienced, sloppy, kind of bad basketball. I don't think that's the case with this group. This is not a every year type of group that comes through a conference like this. This is kind of those once in a decade kind of team, groups that come through these schools. So it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, a really good team's going to be sitting at home for state again this year. I would put Pocatello and Preston up against Blackfoot, who that the District 6 gets two teams to state. I would put Pocatello or Preston up against anybody from District 4. I think they'd run roughshod through that league, but it's just the way it goes. Unfortunately,
I think so through and potentially even Century.
You're right.
Put them up against them again. I think a lot of it's going to be determined on how Harwell does this year, because we know what their other pieces bring, and without him, I think they're middle to upper part, but not necessarily a contender to win it. But with him, they could be a contender to win the conference.
Certainly. 3A classification. Let's start in the Mountain Rivers Conference, where last year Teton kind of enjoyed things at the top of the league. They lost some guys to graduation. What do you think about Teton this year?
I haven't had a chance to see him yet. I haven't had a chance to talk to their coach yet. Hoosevelt's a very, very good coach up there. I've known him for a lot of years. He lost a lot of players last year, and a lot of really effective height that he lost last year as well. And I think as part of that, losing that effective height, they're going to go through some changes this year. I think they're going to be a little bit more of a guard-based team this year than they were last year, where they really had a power inside game. But I look to see them be good again. They had a good JV team last year, some good players that'll come up. A couple of the coaches' sons are on the team as well.
Yeah, Jerem Hoosevelt at Teton. Sugar Salem struggled last year. They kind of had the football hangover where they kind of started slow. And because I did a lot of Sugar Salem games for IdahoSports.com last year, and I kept thinking that, okay, they're going to get this turned around, and they never really did. Sean Freeman, of course, is a great coach, and they bring back some guys. You know, they've got Toby Pinnock inside, who's a good player. That was the biggest key last year for Sugar Salem, was if he could stay out of foul trouble, the Diggers were going to stay in the game. And if he couldn't, then it was going to get ugly.
Yeah. And you know, with last year's team too, you know, there was only one player that returned off the varsity from the year before. And that was Crew Clark. He happened to be a starter, but you got to remember they lost 9 seniors that year before on a team that won 2 consecutive state championships. And so that was, you know, coming into last year, they dealt with that, and they just didn't have as many scores on that team too. This year, they've started out struggling a little bit as well. Did not play well against Shelley, had a lot of opportunities. I saw them against Shelley, also saw them against Kimberly, and their offense is getting them the shots that they need. They're just struggling at this point to put it in the hole. And so the coaches have the offense put there to get them the shots. But again, you got to score. South Fremont has started off good, in that conference as well. And so, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. That's a conference that I don't think right now you can pick who's going to win that. I mean, it could be any of these teams.
I think it's wide open. I'm inclined to agree. Officially, to make a pick, just so it's I'm not a politician here. I'm not just gonna not make a stand. I will say I kind of like South Fremont. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if any of the 3 teams won the league, but I don't know.
Yeah,
just gut feeling.
Well, I look at this and I look at the group that Sugar has, and if they can start putting the ball in the hole, I think they're the best team in the conference. If they can start putting the ball in the hole, it'll come down to that. So I'm going to pick Sugar for this. However, for me, I think right behind them, I'd pick Teton and then look at Sal.
Yeah.
However, they're all very, very close. Very close.
Yeah, I agree. Down in District 5, you've got the defending state champions from Marsh Valley, and they look loaded for Bear. I went with the Mountain Rivers Conference first in our preview because there's going to be more drama around who wins that. I think this is pretty clear. Marsh Valley is the favorite.
Marsh Valley is a very good team. One thing you know about Marsh Valley is they got that ability to just run you out of the gym, to just absolutely run you out of the gym. I mean, you saw it last year. I saw it as well against a Sugar Salem team down at the Preston tournament that I felt Sugar Salem played a good game. And Marsh Valley just, clobbered them because they were so hot from the 3-point line, and any player they put on the floor is a threat. So it makes it tough to double team players. That opens up drives to the hole. Those types of things. If players come over to help, they can dish. I think Marsh Valley, for not being what you would call a tall team, is very, very good.
And that, Blackfoot says positionless basketball. Marsh Valley kind of really was. Any of the 5 guys could step out and knock down a 3. I knew Marsh Valley was going to be good last year when I was at the Preston Indians Classic in late December, and they played Skyview High School from Utah, which is just like a basketball power. And they only lost by 3. And that's right. That's like punching up 2 levels for Marsh Valley as well. And once I saw that, I was like, these guys are going to be pretty good.
They're a very good team, and they're very good defensively as well. They end up with a lot of layups in games because their guards are so good defensively.
Yeah. So guys to watch for Marsh Valley. Michael Belknap is back. He started last year. Peyton Howe is back at point guard. He started last year. And then, there's so many Howells. Kent Howell is the head coach, of course. Yeah. Carter Howell is back. Stanton Howell is back. Everyone's got to be shaking their head going, how many of these guys are there?
Well, and Peyton Howe, 2 years ago, as a sophomore, was our defensive player of the state tournament. Very, very good player. He's a good football player. He's a good basketball player. He is just a lockdown kid. I mean, that's one of those kids that is kind of your Renaissance kid on the court. He can do almost everything for you.
Yeah. Snake River lost a lot via graduation. Cole Gilbert, Jace Mortensen, 2 of their better guys coming back. American Falls, Lance, I'll be honest, I don't know much about. They didn't play very well last year, and their coach didn't send in a preseason questionnaire form. So I don't really know much about American Falls. But
yeah, we know they've already lost to Aberdeen. American Falls is, I don't know. It's up in the air. I will get a chance to look at them this year. I can't give a big opinion not knowing. I don't anticipate a lot. More out of them this year, than last year. However, I do want to say something about Snake River with Coach Coombs down there. As long as he's been there, he is one of those guys that just finds a way to be competitive. No matter what, he just tends to find a way to be competitive. And of course, they made it into the state tournament last year. They had to do a play-in game where they knocked off Sugar Salem up at Shelley High School. and were able to get into the tournament. But Coach Coombs, I mean, he's had longevity for a reason, and again, he's one of those that when all the chips seem to be stacked against him, he seems to pull out a couple aces here and there, So I certainly wouldn't count them out, but I think Marsh Valley is the clear head of that conference.
Yeah, under Coach Coombs, he's taken Snake River to state something like 20 of the 28 seasons he's been coach. I mean, that's pretty incredible stuff.
And has won state championships as well. So
yes, a lot of pedigree. 2A level. Up north in the Nuclear Conference, the Nuke, as North Fremont head coach Shannon Hill calls it. North Fremont is the team to beat. They're gonna contend not just for the conference title, but for the state title.
Yeah, they did have an early loss to Westside, but they are North is a good team, and we know the kind of consistency that you get out of North. They're just a very, very, very consistent team. They are so tough because they're disciplined. I mean, you will have a hard time finding a more disciplined ball club in the state of Idaho at any level than North Fremont.
Their starting backcourt is back, Max Palmer and Jordan Lenz. They've still got Luke Hill inside. So, yeah, North Fremont runs their system very well.
Yep.
And the question is who possibly joins North Fremont at state. Last year, Firth looked like it was going to be that team, and then they kind of head-scratchingly lost to New Plymouth in that state play-in game. Lance, I'll be honest, I covered the 2A state tournament for IdahoSports.com last year. New Plymouth had no business being at state.
No.
They failed to crack 30 points in both of their games. They were 2 in barbecue, and I don't know what happened in that play-in game, but Firth, I bet 95 times out of 100 they beat New Plymouth.
Yeah, that was just one of those games for them, and I don't think Firth is the team this year to push North Fremont. I think, and I might catch a little bit of flack for this, I think Ryrie is the team that can step up, and if anybody in the conference gives a push to North Fremont, I think it's going to be Ryrie. I've had a chance to look at West Jefferson. I saw them during the Jamboree as well. West Jefferson looked to be down a bit. They struggled to put points up against either Skyline or Sugar Salem, and I mean, you got to understand you're only playing a half, and against each of those teams in a Jamboree, and they got blown out in both of those halves. But I'm telling you right now, Ryrie is a team to watch this year. I'm going to be speaking with Matt Harris, their athletic director, a little later this afternoon as well. Of course, former IdahoSports.com broadcaster. So I'll have a chance to talk with him. But I can tell you right now, Ryrie is flying under a lot of people's radars, and Ryrie's going to be a better team than people think. Yeah,
we sent out these preseason forms to every coach in the state and asked them, hey, who's a player or a couple players in your conference we should keep an eye on? We got a lot of Landon Johnson from Ryrie. We really think he's going to explode this year. So
yeah. Now, having said that, North Fremont's my pick to win this conference,
right.
Hands down for me. But if there's any team in the conference that pushes them, I think it's going to be more likely Ryrie than anybody.
Okay, and Firth's got a couple of those guys we saw in football, Athen Blomquist, and
Sure.
Some of the Parks and players like that. Excuse me. Salmon at the bottom. They've got a returning all-conference player in Colton Kirby. But Salmon, I think, is a program that's still kind of building and developing. So that's the Nuclear Conference, the Nuke. And now we go to the Southeast Conference where you mentioned it, Lance. Westside already has a feather in their cap with a win over North Fremont.
Yeah, they do. And so far, Soda Springs, who's been a perennial power in that conference, is not looking good. Malad has struggled out of the gate. They had a loss to West Jefferson just to start the season. I'll have a chance to talk to Tony Gibbs, Malad's coach, during this week as well, and see what he kind of feels about his team. Bear Lake will be tough again. I think, in fact, I have a chance to see Bear Lake this Saturday. So I'll have a little bit better assessment on them. But Bear Lake is always a tough team as well. Of course, you got to remember they're one of the bigger 2As in the state. They were a 3A in with Marsh Valley, Snake River, and American Falls until just several years ago when they dropped down to 2A, won a couple state championships right off the bat. But Bear Lake should be good. I think it'll come down to Bear Lake and Westside.
Yeah, last year Westside beat Bear Lake in the regular season and twice and went into districts as the number 1 seed. And then Bear Lake beat the Pirates.
Yeah.
twice at districts to win the district title. And because of that, West Side got thrown into a first round matchup at state with North Fremont. And it was just kind of a bad deal. And
it was.
The wheels kind of fell off at the end for West Side, but I kind of like the Pirates won. And I agree. I think Bear Lake's going to be right there. West Side, Breiler Shirtliff is a great slasher, kind of like Bruin Fleischman. Blaze Brown is in the backcourt. Bear Lake brings back Brady Shaw. Big question for Bear Lake is, how do you replace Owen Tusher's production?
That's going to be very, very tough. I think with Bear Lake, I think a lot of it's going to come down to, you've got to hit the offensive boards hard. You've got to get a lot of second chance point opportunities, and keep games a little bit lower scoring than you had to last year. However, my dark horse in this tournament is Aberdeen. Aberdeen's not a team to kick at. They're a tough little team this year. They've got some good athletes. I think that Aberdeen could raise a little bit of havoc this year.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye out for Aberdeen, but I think it's a pretty clear Bear Lake 1, West Side 2, bit of a gap, and then the other three teams. This conference gets 1.5 bids to state, so winning the district title will be important because second place will have to win a play-in game against somebody from District 3, so that'll be pretty tough. Let's move on to the 1A D1 ranks. We'll start, there's only one conference, I guess, right? District 5 and 6 are combined at the 1A level. What do you think of this conference with Grace and Taylor's Crossing and Butte County? How do you think this shakes out?
Well, I look at Grace and Butte County as being the top. I think those are the two that will end up the top of that conference. I could be wrong on that. I'm going to have an opportunity this week to speak to my contact down at Grace as well as out at Butte. I'm going to kind of gauge it a little more from there. I've not had a chance to see either of these two teams yet. I should, as the season moves on a little bit, have an opportunity to see both of them. However, they're both some of your bigger 181s and tend to bring a good team to the floor.
This is a situation where, again, I think Butte County and Grace could be among the top 8 teams in the state, but only one gets to go.
Yeah, that's right.
I think I lean Butte County just slightly. Grace brings back a lot of good players: Payson Anderson, Dallin Draper, Gray Gibbs, Ty Gilbert. Yeah. Butte County's got some guys too: Porter Taylor inside and Logan Gammett, and their head coach Mindy Gammett she's pretty good. And I don't know. I lean Butte County, and I think Chalice could be sneaky too. They bring back some guys from last year's team: Jared Olar and RJ Phillips and some other guys. Taylor's Crossing, just the fact that they have a team is a good success.
Yeah.
They are a program that's kind of new, and their coach Cody Nelson admits that for a lot of our guys, we're just it was funny in the preseason form he sent in. I think it was a little tongue in cheek. He said before last year, Cody Hansen, who graduated, was the only one who had played basketball before, so we had a season of learning what a basketball is and how it is used to play the game.
Yeah. Well, I had an opportunity last weekend to talk to a coach out in District 4, the head coach of Bliss High School. And he told me, he says, we're begging teams not to press us this year. He says, I'm telling coaches, hey, listen, guys, we're just at the stage right now where I'm just trying to teach kids, okay, left foot, right hand on your layup, left foot, right hand, right foot, left hand. And he says, we're a ways away from even doing right foot, left hand. We're on left foot, right hand. Of course, they're a 182 school. They're even smaller, and they graduate on average about 8 kids a year. But sometimes you run into that, and you talk with, about Taylor's Crossing and when you're a new school that does it, where you get a Butte, you get a Grace, they're a little more, traditionally sound and have athletes that have come up through those programs. However, my dark horse for this conference is Chalice. I believe that actually Grace wins this conference, but Chalice is my dark horse. I think it's Grace, Butte, Chalice, but Chalice is the one that can kind of raise some havoc in the conference.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun to watch those 3 teams, kind of like we talked about Pocatello, Preston, Century, right? Kind of duking it out all year. Same thing could happen.
Yep.
1A D2 Rocky Mountain Conference. This is that big 8-team league that features kind of a top half and a bottom half, I feel like. The preseason coaches poll had Rockland in the top spot. I'm inclined to agree. Coach Shea Neal brings back a lot of good guys.
Yeah, Shea Neal, he's an old Malad boy like I am. They were, of course, just little teeny kids when I was graduate from high school, still in diapers, him and his brothers at the time. He won a couple of state championships as a Dragon as well under Coach Terry Jones when he was there. Shea knows how to win. Rockland should be very good. I think North Gem is going to be a tough team this year.
That's the big question, because North Gem has kind of had the run of the league the last couple of years, but man, they lost some guys. James Bodley graduated. Logan Corda graduated. They do bring back Bridger Hatch, but
they bring back a group of really good athletes.
Yeah.
Again, not necessarily basketball players, but athletes. And one thing that athletes can do is they can, because of their being able to play defense, athletes can always play defense, even if they struggle a little bit to put the ball in the hole. And what that does is all of a sudden you start taking teams out of their ability to score where they usually score. Game becomes a different game.
Yeah.
I think North Gem has the ability to do that.
Yeah, it's the question. It's just like North Gem's football team. Is there enough around Bridger Hatch to carry this team?
That's right.
I kind of think Water Springs might challenge for that second spot. They were picked third in the preseason coaches poll. North Gem was picked second, but man, Scott Moe is a great coach at Water Springs. They've got Daniel Canfield back, who was one of the better players in the conference last year. Drew Plocker is there. I don't know. I kind of like Water Springs.
Yeah, very well could be. Water Springs was my dark horse for this tournament. Again, the team that can step up and raise some havoc somewhere along the line. I'm gonna stick with Rockland and North Gem as my top two, but Water Springs is in that mix.
And then fourth in the preseason coaches poll is Grace Lutheran. They're one of those teams that seems forever young, right? They've always got freshmen and sophomores. Head coach Jeremy Hess, though, has some players to build around, and I think they could be kind of a sneaky dark horse as well.
They very well could, and they're always going to be perennially young, because if they get a really good player in their system, typically they're going to leave and go to one of the public schools, that are somewhat close to them. And that's one of the struggles of being a private school, is if you're in an area where because private schools are usually smaller schools here, and if you're in an area where you really have a star coming through your system as a freshman and sophomore, oftentimes they find themselves at one of the bigger public schools for the last couple of years.
Yeah, and they do have a nice co-op with Pocatello High School for some of the sports, like soccer, for example. Grace Lutheran athletes can play with Pocatello, and in fact, one of the players from Grace Lutheran that played for Pocatello's soccer team this year was one of the best players on the team, and actually got a college scholarship. So it was kind of cool to see that.
Yeah, you can see that, and I'm trying to think the other ones. For whatever reason, I had wrestling in my mind too. I could be wrong on that.
Could be, for sure. And we should mention, speaking of co-ops, with Taylor's Crossing and the 1AD1, they are getting a couple of players from Alturas Prep as well in Idaho Falls. So that's going to be kind of a co-op this year. So Rockland, North Gem, Water Springs, Grace Lutheran, the top four. And then to me, there's kind of the second tier, which is, Mackey was picked 5th, Showban was picked 6th, Leadore 7th, Clark County 8th.
Yeah. And that's I think that's pretty on.
By the time we published our preseason previews, Showban didn't have a boys basketball coach yet. I think they've got one hired now, but I still haven't heard anything. So
I heard they have one hired. I don't know who.
Yes, kind of a mystery. They've had a lot of turnover at the school. They've got a new activities director who started very recently. So But Showban always has athletes and always has kids that can play. So they're a team to watch for sure. And then the other interesting team is Mackey. They bring back basically a whole new roster and an entirely new coaching staff. Scott Yearsley, first-year head coach. He's never coached before, but he does have 23 years of being a basketball official.
Yeah, I've known Scott for a long time. He grew up in Marsh Valley, or grew up going to Marsh Valley. Scott's a good dude. He was here in District 6 as an official for a lot of years, veteran official, has done some college officiating, aiding as well. And I think Scott will do a good job out there. He's got to build. But Scott knows that. I mean, he's not going into this with unreal expectations. Scott knows who he is, and he knows what he's got around him, and he knows that it's a process. to get these kids where they need to be. And I think Scott's the guy to get them there.
Yeah, and I still maintain, I still maintain for Clark County up in DuBois that the thing that hurt their program the most was the girls having enough for their own varsity team, because for a couple of years there was, 2 or 3 girls that just played on the boys team at Clark County, and it really helped them with depth. But now they have enough girls for their own varsity team, which is great, right? But at the same time, it hurts the boys.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, again, we talked at the 1A D2s, and those are some of the struggles that you run into. They're just some of the struggles. I told you I was talking to Bliss's coach last weekend, and he was telling me some of the struggles that they're going through. And those are things that are not uncommon, because there is, I think, of all the leagues and all the school sizes in the state, the biggest gap is between the top of the 1A D1s, the top of the 1A D2s and the bottom of the 1A D2s. I think that is the biggest gap that you get in any of the school sizes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do you know, is Bliss there? Are they playing a varsity schedule or like
they're playing a JV schedule?
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. They're playing a JV schedule this year. Sometimes teams have to do that. I remember going back to 1985, back when they were A4. A1 was the biggest and A4 was smallest, and A3 was what the school was that I went to, and Malad won their first state championship that year against Gooding. Well, Bliss played in the state championship game that year, and now, you look at them, they're playing a JV schedule, things like that. And that's just sometimes what you have to go through as some of those small schools. Ledor's had to do those types of things before.
Yeah. I did want to mention, as we get to the end here, for some of our smaller boys basketball schools, there's the small school showcase going on this weekend at Mountain View High School in Meridian. This is a really cool deal, Lance, where they bring together 16 1A schools. I think there's one 2A Compass Charter, but it's mostly 1A schools.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, hey, we get to play in this huge gym at Mountain View High and play other good teams from around the state. And it's kind of a cool deal. North Gem and Grace Lutheran will be traveling. This is a boys basketball event. We're going to have every single game live with video coverage on IdahoSports.com. So if you're a hoops junkie like me, I mean, first game tips off at 10 a.m., last game tips off at 8:30 at night. I'm pretty much going to be glued in all day, I think. 8 games.
It should be very good. State does the same thing for football for them. They do it out at Middleton. And so it's, these small school showcases is good, because oftentimes these schools, I mean, a lot of these small schools, unless they're a private school, a lot of them are out in the boonies. I mean, they're out there and they're ways away from a lot of places. I don't know if you've ever been to a place like Ledor, or North Gem's not necessarily in the boonies. It's between Marsh Valley and Grace, essentially. And then Soda's right there as well. But a lot of these, they don't get to see a lot of teams from up north. Obviously, there's a long way from north and south, whether you're a big school or a small school, but it tends to be that, in football and things like that, places like Rigby will see a Coeur d'Alene or a Sandpoint or a team like that during football or basketball season at a tournament. 1As don't tend to get that luxury. So a tournament like this really helps them out.
Yeah. So North Gem will play Horseshoe Bend at 1:00 on Saturday. And then Grace Lutheran plays Garden Valley at 7:00. That'll be an interesting game. Garden Valley, of course, won the state title last year, but they lost pretty much everything. So that'll be a good game for Grace Lutheran.
Yeah, I think so too. And that'll let us know where they are at. Again, a young team, let us know where they're at. Yeah.
And it's kind of a fundraiser for all the small schools as well. So it works out really nicely. So again, that's all day Saturday. Live coverage on IdahoSports.com. All right, Lance, thanks for breaking down all the boys hoops. You're kind of a hoop head like I am, so I love talking basketball with you.
You and me are hoop junkies, man. Is there a special clinic for that? They can go to help us out.
We'll have to check into that.
Yeah, hoop junkie rehab.
Yeah, no doubt. We're really ramping up with boys and girls basketball. We're gonna start having more and more games on the broadcast schedule at IdahoSports.com. We're kind of putting the finishing touches on that, so keep checking back. You can always find out which games we're covering by clicking on the game streams tab on the homepage of IdahoSports.com. But yeah, we're gonna have lots of holiday tournaments coming up, and it's the best time of year.
It is, for sure.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in.
I would sing that song, but we don't want to run listeners off because of that.
Nobody.
They might run off because of my opinions anyway, but I don't want to run it off for my singing.
Well, you look like a crooner, but you don't sing like one, Lance.
No. My parents would have wasted a lot of money had they have tried to put me in singing lessons because it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, a money pit to be sure. So
I am a good shower singer, though. I'll tell you what, I can belt those out in the shower. I'm unbelievable. Single audience. I'm my own audience, and I can rock it.
Yeah, Freddie Mercury, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for this edition of the East Idaho Prepcast, brought to you by Pure Adrenaline Motorsports, your source for pulse-pounding adrenaline sports apparel and accessories that ensure you have what you need to unleash your inner beast. For Lance Taylor, I'm Brandon Baney. Enjoy the games this weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here next time on IdahoSports.com.